Hello and welcome back, friends, to week 3 of the Build Your Library Ancient Civilizations vlog video series, Knowledge-a-Palooza, that we have been doing. God, I love that one. So this week we were focused on mainly on the Fertile Crescent and Huyuk.
We're probably butchering that. We're sorry.
We apologize to the people of Turkey for butchering that. We're going to butcher next week's as well, because I can tell you, well, there's some words that I'm not working well on. So we had a good time, really just talking about like first, building of civilizations, people beginning to settle down, doing the farming thing, building simple cities, Huyuk. I'm just going to say it the way I always say it. Hayuk.
Probably wrong. We're sorry.
Whatever. The first city, they believe one of the first big cities, and we really focused on that because it just helped us ground a lot of what we were watching, what we were doing, the artwork, what we were reading. Just kind of focusing back in on that, I think, was the best way to go, and that's kind of what we did. So let's get into the books.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to talk about a spine of ours that we were working with, a child through time. Now,
this is actually hers. This is
hers?
This is a spine through. We love this book.
I think we referenced this also in the prehistory.
Yes.
There was like 1 or 2 sections in here.
There's one, Kaya, I think.
Kaya, yeah.
Anyway, this is a wonderful book. I want to Vanna for me. Our kids won't even know what that means. Okay, so what's really cool about this book is it features a child at that point in time, at that place, and what their life was like. The clothes they wore, what they played with, what their family did, where they lived.
This is the book we're going to be dipping back into all the way through these ancient civilizations because there's just so many of them.
Well, it goes all the way up. We're going to be doing it through all of history. Yeah. So it's a wonderful book. Highly recommend that you buy this book. Our daughter looks at it all the time. She really loves to reference this book. If you were doing the Around the World journey and you really loved Children Like Me, this is the history version of that.
Yep.
It's exactly the same, where it just gives you, and there's a few spreads about famous folks, but mostly it's just an everyday child that was living through a certain event in time or place in time. It's wonderful,
especially if your child tends to gravitate towards learning through the eyes of a comparable child, whether it's through time or through location. If you like watching videos of kids doing things in their country, these are the books that are really, really helpful. I think that can really ground the history with the child, and they can that kid looks just like me, or he looks like my friend, and they can imagine them doing those actions, living in those places, working with those tools, or living that history. It's a good way to connect, I think.
Yeah, and I think kids do just naturally, of everything that we've read to our daughter, these books that talk about the kids specifically.
Those early readers that we did as well on the Around the World journey did that a lot, where they were focusing on that child.
Right, there was follow me around, whatever, and it was about that kid's life, or living in Brazil or whatever, what that was like. The ones that focus on kids, I think the kids make those connections better. So if there's one book, a couple books out of this whole thing, get the Usborne Encyclopedia of History and get this.
Yep.
It's fabulous.
Absolutely. Very good.
Really good.
Speaking of Usborne, the Great History Search.
This is a spine that we added. This is just a really fun, this is almost like it's kind of like a Where's Waldo-ish type of thing.
It is very Where's Waldo-ish.
But it starts...
But not as I don't think there's as many silly...
So this is Egypt, but it goes back, it actually does...
early people.
It goes early people, and then it's go one more forward, and then it does first farmers.
Yep.
And so it's really cool because it steps all the way through history, and it's neat because the things that they're trying to find, and you have to find a number of them around, but you get to read a little bit about them while you go through. So it is a look and find, but it's better than that. And they have these on several. They have a dinosaur one and other ones.
There was the prehistory one that we actually used.
That's the dinosaur. But this one, it's really quite good. I'm surprised for a look and find just how much information is packed into this book, and our daughter just immediately gravitates towards what do I have to find. It's really fun because I can read about it while she's looking.
Nice padded books here too. You can see it's a hardcover, but it's actually kind of spongy. So really cool if you have younger kids who are looking, to touch and play and look at books. So my 4-year-old likes to look through this as well.
Yeah, and it's really fun to be able to sit down with a younger child because of the look and find nature. Our older daughter's listening to the information, and the younger one is just trying to find all the things.
Exactly.
So it works out really well. So this is one of the spines that we added, and we'll be going back to this week after week.
So we'll talk about first, the book that you've been continuing with, Nathaniel Flood, Beastologist, book 3.
Right. So if you've been following, I've been reading. This is a series that Torchlight recommended about a boy in the 1920s who is learning to be a beastologist, which is caring for magical creatures. So it's got a little bit of that, magical element in there, which is really fun. It's good for first grade as far as there's nothing too perilous in it. Our daughter is super hooked. She loves this. We'll be finishing up the 4th book next week. I do understand that I think it might leave on a bit of a cliffhanger and they haven't done a 5th book. So we'll see how that works. But maybe that's the writing prompt that I should write. How would we finish the story? I don't know.
How would R.L. Lefevre's finish?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But so far we've been enjoying it. So this has been the fun book that we've been reading through. So if you've picked this one up, it doesn't have anything to do with this time in history, but it's been a really good read. So.
Next one, Kate Camillo's Despereaux.
Oh, yeah.
Winner of whatever fancy Newbery Medal Award there is.
So this was a 3-week read that we just finished.
Chapters. So the chapters were only about a picture every few pages, but really cool, beautiful artwork, even though it's just black and white, really fun and kind of very stylistic. This is a great story. I really enjoyed it. There is a little bit of there's a darkness in the story that I think is buoyed by her kind of playful writing style, where she's a narrator kind of talking to the reader, so she kind of breaks the fourth wall periodically in the story, and very fun whenever she says, "Reader, what would you think about that?" And I always would exchange it for my daughter's name, and sometimes she'll be doing something look like, "Am I in the book?" Just to get her attention and keep her perked up. But there's a darkness in the book, but it's buoyed by the playful writing style. Obviously the Midgery So character is actually kind of sad character.
There's a few kind of sad characters.
There's some kind of sad characters. Even Despereaux, if you think about it, he's abandoned to the dungeon by his father, and that's pretty sad. Roscuro, the Princess P, her mother is killed. So there's death and there's darkness and light, and those are themes that run throughout this book. Very heavy, big, broad themes: life and death, good versus evil, the decisions we make in our lives and how they affect downstream. The weaving of characters and their decisions, really, really good, absolutely fantastic. Wonderful piece of children's literature and true literature, and I really liked it because it just has those big themes of life and death in it that I think are very grand and bold. It's a very bold story.
Right, we were talking about that actually earlier today. You're like, I don't know that I would write something that was this, that had these dark elements for kids, but it really does work, and it's a fantastic book. So we decided, since we finished up Despereaux, that this is what we were going to lean into this week for our food and for our movie. So the movie,
in the story, there's the idea of soup, and soup has been banned because the queen died because the rat fell into her soup, and she got scared and she ended up dying. So
there's no soup anywhere. So we decided that we were going to make soup.
Yep.
My daughter helped me make. I'll find a recipe and post something that's close-ish to. It's a family recipe for me that we make an Italian sausage, spinach and potato soup. Mm-hmm. It's absolutely wonderful.
That's so good.
It was really good, and we made. What did we make with it? Oh yes, we made dinner rolls with it. Yes. I didn't bring the book in, but we made dinner rolls, or she made dinner rolls from the America's Test Kitchen complete baking book for young chefs, which I'll link in the show notes because it's awesome. Yep, so she made the dinner rolls that went with our soup. The rolls were
fantastic.
They were the best dinner rolls we've ever made. They were really good. And one of the things I like about that book is that all the recipes make smaller quantities.
Yes.
So they're not making a huge volume. It just made one little 9 square of rolls. It didn't make a whole sheet pan of rolls, which was good. I don't need a sheet pan of rolls. So she made the rolls and she helped me make the soup. So we had this wonderful dinner.
It's wonderful.
And then we went ahead and watched the movie. It's streaming on Netflix right now. And we did all like the movie, but it does deviate from the book.
A little bit, yeah. And right out of the bat, it deviates.
Yeah, there's a few places where you're like, this wasn't exactly. And so I think you're dealing with these really complex themes, and then there's several places where the movie tried to simplify them. And I'm thinking it's mostly for time.
And also the nature of the way Kate wrote the book. She'll have a whole section on one character, and you will leave that character, like Despereaux character. Book 1 is Despereaux. Book 2 is Roscuro. Book 3 is Midgery So, which is the young girl. And then the 4th one is where they all come together. So it's hard to think about telling a linear story the way the book was written, but I could have imagined them weaving the story because their storylines are all overlapping. But yeah, right out of the bat, they changed, where Roscuro's from and all that stuff. And so your child might be going, wait a minute, is this the movie is this for the book? It may be a little confused. So note that the movie changed a little bit, but the overarching arc of the story is still essentially the same. But there are some changes, you'll notice.
Right. So one of the things I think is cool about that, knowing as you go into it now that you know that there have been changes, is prepare that. We had seen this before, so we knew that there were going to be changes. So it was a great discussion topic for our daughter. We told her before we started, some of the things are different. I want you to pay attention to what's different.
Yeah.
And let's talk about why we think they made those changes. Why would a filmmaker, decide to make Roscuro a sailor, and why would they, these different things happen? So it gave us a lot to really discuss, because that process of adapting literature for the screen is really interesting and something that you can kind of do some comprehension type questions on too. So we had a good time with that, but know that it is different.
Absolutely. With Despereaux, we have the young ones, the 4-year-old, did some artwork for Despereaux.
We love to print coloring pages.
It was very funny because she did this, and then she took my 4-year-old took this and put it into the pantry, and I came out in the morning and go, why is Despereaux in the pantry? She is cackling. Despereaux's in the pantry, just like in the story. And I was like, I just didn't even connect that because I've been reading the story to my 8-year-old with the 4-year-old, and they're eating breakfast and stuff, and I'm, dramatically reading in a wonderful, narrative voice. And I didn't realize the 4-year-old was paying attention, and she put Despereaux in the pantry, where there's a scene where Despereaux's in the pantry recovering. He shouldn't have his tail, but no spoilers. But
dark.
anyway,
We said it was dark.
Just fun little things there that you end up getting, and I didn't realize that she was actually paying attention. So it's really cool. Now, other artwork that we were doing heavily kind of dovetailed with the videos we watched, which was this kind of understanding of the Fertile Crescent that we were struggling to do, and I was able to pull down some artwork of basically the city, style of houses that they had, and again, giving this to my daughter to color, and also not just coloring, but also talking about shading and darkness. And you can see in here, I set, where the sun was. And I said, okay, on this side, it's a little bit darker. On this side, it's a little bit lighter. Having her think about color choices and stuff, and pulling the art into, the activity of learning. And again, while she's doing this, I'm able to read, some of the books, some of the spines, read Despereaux or something like that. So she can focus on coloring and experiencing part of the learning, having a little bit more of a depth, because she can kind of like wrap her head around what the city looked like while she's also learning about that city. So, and then also doing the houses as well. Just imagining that she was in one of these houses where you approach from the top, and you live inside, and you exit through the top.
They buried the dead underneath. I got home from work. That was the first thing she said, Mom, do you know they buried people under the floor? It must have
stunk. I'm like, yeah, it was probably a thing. Also, some of the printouts. What's really cool is in the Build Your Library, which you should absolutely have, there's a lot of these appendices that she's included, Emily has included, and they're just wonderful little like drawings. And again, playing with color and shading and completing the activity. These are really cool projects to do while you are reading all the content. So it's something that I like to double up on.
It's a great way to save a little bit of time.
And that's something that my oldest is really good at is listening while she's doing an activity. And I think she learns best that way. She likes to play Legos and listen to an audiobook. She likes to do this activity that she was sewing today, and she was listening to her audiobook. So she is a audio learner, listener while doing something. And I like to kind of dovetail these art activities while she's listening to me read something. If I'm reading something a little bit longer, in like one of the other spine books and stuff, I will then turn and show it to her and have her point something out, and then come back, and then she'll go back to writing. So it's a nice play. It's just learning what's best for your learner and how to approach that. Then we also had our word prompt again, our writing prompt.
I'm continuing to forge ahead with the writing prompts, which I think is really cool. This one
got a title.
Yes.
The Lost Leader of Fertile Crescent. And I want to say, these stories are getting longer and longer.
Right. So our daughter came up with this completely on her own. As you said in the last video, you give her the writing prompt. And the writing prompt, I don't just say...
This was dramatic. This was like dare I say, a prehistoric thriller.
Yeah. So I don't just say write a story about Fertile Crescent, right? It's more that I would say, imagine that there has been an incident that's occurred in the city. What does the city look like? What does it smell like? What kind of person, who's your main character? Who's their family? I ask a lot of kind of questions I don't just say, hey, come up with this, right? I'm asking tons of leading questions. And so then you give her all of these pieces so she can kind of try to build a character. Yes. She can build a plot. She can think about the environment. And then you send her off for 10 minutes to go think about it on the couch. And when she's ready, she's like, okay, I've got my story.
Ariel, this story not only had a flashback sequence, but it also had an unbelievable cliffhanger, because a piece of information was about to be asked from the grandmother, and right as she asked that question, these men came and took the grandmother. And the whole point was they had to get the grandma so she could tell them that piece of information. I think it was their hunting grounds.
No. The whole thing was, this whole week, our daughters wanted to know nothing more than, why did they have ladders? Why did they enter the house from the top?
And right as the grandma was about to tell them, the men came down and stole the grandmother and carried her away.
So the last line of her story is, they finally got the grandmother, and she finally got to ask the question. And the grandma says,
to keep people from getting our stuff. Well, that didn't help you when grandma was stolen. Anyway.
So that's why.
I'm not going to criticize an 8-year-old's plot holes. There's enough plot holes on Netflix shows that you know.
It was interesting, right? Because the buildings in the city didn't have any doors. They just had a ladder, and then they went in through the top. Yeah. And she was like, why is this happening? And we were trying to find the answer to it, because we were like, I guess it's because they didn't want anything to be stolen, because we did read about how now that people are settling in one place, and they started to get pottery, and they started to accumulate wealth, and all of a sudden they have stuff to steal.
But it's funny because she took all those aspects of what she was learning, and she wrapped that into the story, which I think from our standpoint, it really feels like it's, you know, for lack of a better term, it's working, you know.
Right.
It's like, actually, it's working.
She's synthesizing the information, and she can then tell a fictional story based on it. So
pulling those ideas in.
I think the writing prompt is awesome. You guys definitely try this if you're interested. We just ascribed again for our daughter with, you know, we just do it on Google Drive, and then Google Docs, and we print it out real quick, and then she can draw
the funny thing is, when she wins the Nobel Prize in Literature, people are going to be analyzing this video and freezing the frame and pulling the text of this story as the long lost story of our daughter, the lost leader of Fertile Crescent. But anyway.
So do a writing prompt. If whatever your child, you know, I wrote these in advance of what we studied for the week, and so you could definitely do that.
These are getting progressively larger, and she's thinking more and more, and I love it. It was a great idea.
I think it's really good. If you find that maybe you want to wait until your learner is like maybe partway through the week, and you find something they're really interested in, then you do a writing prompt based on that. I just did these in advance because I got a day job, so I had to do this so that you could do it with her. But anyways, if you want to, you could find something that your child's particularly fascinated with about the week, and then make the writing prompt all about that. But I think the idea of scribing and then adding a little bit of art to it, although honestly, the art section is getting very small. And I really feel like, in comparison to the kind of, you know, artwork she's doing here, I really feel like maybe this just needs to be a story with no artwork. I expected the stories to be really short, and then for her to do art. I didn't really expect them to be this long. So maybe we're going to have to change it up as the weeks go on, but I think adding writing is really good.
And doing the writing at the end of the week, like you said, is the best way for her to incorporate all that learning and knowledge that she's gained throughout the week, and then roll those into the stories as kind of a creative thing. I've been doing that just by happenstance, because I attack the curriculum first, and then I double back at like day 3 or 4, and I start doing the stuff that you have put together, and then I kind of finish with the writing prompt, and it's just naturally working that way. But it's been very effective because she has all this learning from the previous week or two, and I can, you know, help stimulate ideas for these stories, and it's really, really fun.
Yep.
Yeah, like the one of them last week's, I had to go dig it out of her bedroom because she wanted to like keep it in her room like it was a book or something. So it was pretty cool.
I think, and that's what I think we should do, is I think we should just like hole punch them and put them in a binder for her, and at the end she'll have this entire story of ancient civilization. So it's really cool. So these are the books that we did this week, and the activities that we did. Obviously, this book list is a little bit shorter this week. We're only highlighting the, you know, we're trying to do like 1 or 2 spines a week. But we will list in the show notes all the books that we used this week. There's a ton of them. So check check those out. And if you want to grab any of those, we appreciate your support.
Feel free to hit subscribe below. And if you're just discovering us on YouTube, we also have a podcast as well where we cover all various homeschooling topics, not just our around the world journeys. We touch a little bit on the curriculums we do, but we do a lot of informationals there as well. If you'd like to, there's an entire feed for just our podcast that you can listen to and watch as well. So see you guys next week, week 4. We're heading to Sumer.
Right, we're going to start. We're going to really be talking about
writing.
The earliest writing, which I think is really going to be
cuneiform and early writing in China. So it'll be a good
bones.
Oracle bones.
I'm learning so much already myself. I gotta say. So stay tuned. Thanks, guys.